Now this is the CLAVA cairns, like rings of stones made by Bronze Age people. Pretty big. These are taller than me, these standing stones. I'm guessing they would have been decorated with semi-precious stones, probably to reflect the sunlight. I'm sure it's a burial ground, but I'm sure these would have significance, that these are probably facing north, east, west and south, perhaps. And this one is called the ring stone. There's no way in, no way out, but there are what appears to be either tunnels or graves for very large people. So there's one here. You can see there's another one here. So it looks like almost like either a grave or a tunnel. And this stone here is about as tall as me. As I stand, I'm just a little bit, about 4 inches taller than it. So I'm going to walk along the top here. I'll show you the inside. You get an idea of how big that is now. It's a spectacular thing. It's Bronze Age. So this was made even before I was born. There's another one over here. I don't know if the shape of the stones is significant. I'm not really sure. But you can see on here, this one is split. And then this stone is taller than me. I'm 5'8". And that's a good bit taller than me. Baby stone there. Quite strange. So they're all circular. I wonder if the shape reflects the sun and the moon. Or an orbit of something. Here's one of these stones. Isn't it hard to imagine who would put a road in centuries gone past? This would have been an old track, I guess, but why would you put a road today? Why not direct it in a field? But that's the way it is, folks. Wow. It's quite amazing, isn't it? This is taller than me. This was a battle, a very, very marking battle in the Highlands, and this was between Bonnie Prince Charlie and the Crown. And the Crown was represented with Butcher Cumberland, and he was a savage soldier. He took no quarter. So the Jacobite army was a rabble of clansmen who wanted to put Bonnie Prince Charlie on the throne again as the rightful pretender. This was after James VI of Scotland, and they objected to the present crown, which were Hanoverian from Germany. So there was a gathering of quite a few groups of clans. Not all of the clans wanted to do this because they realised where their bread was butter. They were in the pay of the English. They were being supported by the English both financially and politically in their little areas, and they realised that if they joined up against them, they'd lose that. So a lot of the clansmen had nothing to do with it and kept their distance. So it's just a few, the Frasers, McGilverys, Monroe, Mackintosh, to name but a few. And they fell here in their hundreds. Absolutely in the hundreds. Now I was able to connect with a soldier who actually made himself known to me, and he said, John Stewart here. Now I had to ask, in my ignorance, I had to ask, was he for the crown or was he a Jacobite? And he was for the crown. He served under Cumberland, and he would have marched up General Wade's military road. And he said that the area of fields along this area were on the battlefield of Culloden. He said it was knee deep in bodies and blood. He said Cumberland, he said he cut them down. He just cut the soldiers down, the soldiers of the Jacobite army. He cut them down like a sharp scythe through the tall grass. That was his words. Now John Stewart tells me he was 27 years old. He had a wife, he had 2 children. 3 children, being corrected. And he'd been based in both Edinburgh and in Dundee. It's quite an interesting story, and I thank John Stewart for that. He lost his life on that day at Culloden. So it's a bloody battle, and this is when Bonnie Prince Charlie made for the Isle of Skye. Isn't that fantastic? See, all the arches are uniform until you get to the one in the middle. They were really keen on the aesthetic of the way things looked. I love this kind of stuff. Victorian engineering at its best. It has been raining somewhat, but I believe this could be a seat made for one. So this is the chains for the portcullis, and these are the gates of the portcullis. Let's have a look, see if we can get in. 665. this will give you an idea of just how thick these walls are. Put my hand there. And these are where they would have put their arrows, bows and arrows from. If I can show you some of the details of this turreting, look at this. Beautiful stonework, absolutely beautiful stonework. References to the sea with the anchor above there. Coat of arms above that window. And that's their other coat of arms there. And flag. And usually a flag flies from a castle in the same way as it does for royals. And it signifies that the owner is at home. It's a little like a secret garden. Oh, that's a big old door, that certainly is. So there's quite a rush of water there. It's turned out to be just a little bit cold, and it's about 11 degrees. Welcome to the Arctic North. Just to show off their wealth, they even have their own maze. Well, this is where I'm staying, in the Highlands here. I'm halfway between Inverness and Fort William, and that's the view I see outside my window. I have an Airbnb property here. I'll just show you that I've just rented for days. So that's where I'm staying. It's got a nice surrounding, and that's the view that I've just been looking at. I wanted to tell you about my auntie and uncle, and they lived just down the road in a place called Fort Augustus, 12 miles down the road. And my Uncle Alec was the water bailiff for Loch Ness, and I last saw him in about 1972. Uncle Alec was one of the first people to publicly write about his experiences of seeing the Loch Ness monster. And this is not a man that was to be trivial or think it was a joke. Far from it. He was very, very serious about the whole Loch Ness thing. So Uncle Alec had been walking along early one morning, and he had seen a wake in the water, and then he saw the creature, which he described as being like sort of a serpent style thing. There had been many people who have tried to fake this over the years, and shortly after he witnessed it, there was a friar at the abbey, at Fort Augustus Abbey. You wouldn't have thought he was a man given to telling lies, but he saw exactly the same type of thing that my Uncle Alec saw. Then there was a lady who was secretary at the Drumnadrochit Hotel, just a small village outside of Fort Augustus, and she witnessed very similar thing. All their stories coincided. They'd never met each other prior to it, but they had witnessed the same thing. So Uncle Alec was also one of the people that wrote for, as a part-time correspondent, the Inverness Advertiser, and that was the local rag for Inverness, shall we say, where people would get all their news from. He wrote the whole story down, and it was picked up by major news outlets, of course, ridiculed beyond belief. And then about 2 years later, there was a man who was a hoaxer. Marmaduke Wetherell his name was, and he hoaxed a whole sighting of this, which caused immense annoyance for everybody, because those people who really had seen this suddenly found themselves in a situation where they were not believed, all because of one man. Several years later after that, there was the very famous surgeon photo where it looks like a brontosaurus with its head sticking out of the water. Well, that was a complete fake. There was no surgeon. They were just a group of men who had made a model about a foot tall and pushed it out into the water and filmed it. That's a disgrace, absolute disgrace. So my Uncle Alec kept it all to himself, and he thought, there is no way I'm going to tell anybody anything about this anymore. And as kids, he showed us his original drawings and his original notepad with all the information in. He always said that he always knew when he saw a true sighting, because if it was serpent-like, that was a true sighting. Anything else was a fake. And that pretty much was his story, and that's going back to 1930s, the mid-1930s. There have been sightings since. There was a survey done fairly recently, within the last 20-30 years, where they had sonar, really specific sonar equipment, and they did find large objects, large anomalies that came very, very close to the camera, unusual shapes they couldn't attribute to a known type of creature. as a scientist, you've got to have absolute proof, and they haven't got the absolute proof yet.